The song is written from the perspective of one sibling talking to another sibling who is trapped in the throes of addiction. And the sibling is reminding their loved one how strong they are, and there's an area where it just repeats it, the chant, and it gets louder and stronger, and that is to express that point when one is dealing with a loved one in addiction and they are at a loss for words but want to express those deep emotions. It ends on a light, quieter note, just reminding that person that they are loved. Vocals without drums. Oh, you waka hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya. Oh, you waka hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya. Oh, you waka hey ya. Ni hey ya, hey ya. Oh, you waka hey ya. Ni hey ya, hey ya. Oh, you waka hey ya. Tuk nefturen hey ya, hey ya. Oh, you waka nit nga. Tuk nefturen hey ya, hey ya. Oh, you waka hey ya. Hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya. Oh, you waka hey ya. Hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya. Oh, you waka hey ya. Kunukan ken, hey ya, hey ya. Oh, you waka nit nga. Kunukan ken, hey ya, hey ya. Oh, you waka hey ya. Hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya.
Wow. It's really stunning, Hannah.
And I forget how, because I don't listen to that song very often. It's written from a very personal place, and I forget how much emotion is in there, because it is literally, I'm pleading to one of my siblings. Anyways, Chamai hui Hannah Shol, Updachat Naga Shuk Shunami Shushlianga, Mama ka Sophie Frets, Maluganak Tadang to Asti Frets and Good Bruce Burns Slu Chamani Shushlik, Wika Gagel, Ma Pingayunak, Awaku Dank Toa, Paniaka Sheloma Kissin. My name is Hannah Scholl. I am Suchbek from Kodiak Island. My mom is Sophie Frets, and my dads are Steve Frets and Bruce Burns. I have a amazing, wonderful, supportive husband, Gage Scholl, and 4 beautiful children. What I do predominantly is working as a full-time artist and culture bearer. And what that looks like is never sitting still and never doing the same thing twice, basically. The power behind the songs that I write, they don't come from, like, it's not a process of sitting down and writing a song. It's a process of having to process through certain emotions, or you know, if you ever get that song, that tune stuck in your head that you've never heard before, and or the drum beat that or the phrase or the words or the thoughts you're trying to convey that don't quite come across on canvas. So each of them is, I don't even like to call them my songs, because it kind of seems like they just come from somewhere else. But that the words to my brother was processing through emotion. And it was basically when there's that point when you need to discuss, you need to process through something, or it becomes unhealthy for yourself or for your family or for your community. And for our community, I know that singing and dancing is a huge way to process through emotion like that. And the way that addiction is plaguing our communities all across our nation, but especially in our Indigenous communities, the song seemed to flow with the direction of what was trying, or what is being conveyed through the show.
I'm Colleen Furman Thomas. I'm Gwichagwa Chin from Fort Yukon. My parents are Jim and Susan Furman from Fort Yukon and Fairbanks, and my grandparents are Zelma and Amos Kelly from Fort Yukon. So I did 2 paintings, and I thought the theme of the show was really fitting when I heard about it, because I feel like a lot of my work deals with the idea of protecting, but it's mostly, for me, it's more like internal, like I'm protecting. I'm thinking about protection for myself and my family. Sorry, this is starting to move. What did I put in there? Strange kindness. I use a lot of porcupine quills. I do mixed media paintings. And when I'm painting, the quills to me represent a lot of things, like so much of it's so personal that it's hard for me to like say it out loud. And I'm really impressed with Hannah's song and her ability to speak of it, because that's something I struggle with. And I put it like into a painting, and and I hope I don't have to talk too much about it. But for me, quills were what I used to represent protecting, or also it represents my culture, and like my family's background in sewing, and like surviving through sewing and hunting, and living off the land. And the quills were a way of showing that we survive, but it's also dangerous, and there's so much beauty in it. We can make something beautiful out of it, but it's also, it can harm us and it can hurt us. And I just think a lot about materials when what I choose. Yeah. And I made these 2 pieces. I made these 2 pieces last year, and I felt like they were a huge effort to make, because during lockdown and home with my kids, doing homeschool, I felt like I was really struggling to create, and my work got really difficult to, like, I had too much weighing on me to like sit and focus and create something. And the new treachery piece felt like super dark and heavy to me. But when I was finished with it, I was really happy that I completed something, because last year, I don't know if everybody else was that way, but it felt like I had so much to say, I didn't know how to get it out. And I had so much to say, but I couldn't quite process it. And it was a really strange creative time. And yeah, I'm glad that one's over. So.
Threading Cedar. as I said in my statement, is it's connecting my memories of carving. And the carving, so this piece actually followed another piece that was called Wood, Water, and Distance. I'm not a wood carver, but I learned how to carve some cedar. I love the materials. I love the smell. I love the just the qualities of the wood, to work with the wood. And to me, there's a meaning, there's a thread, that a thought through my work that's carried through. And this with the thread and sewing the cedar onto the canvas. To me, you're not repairing the piece of wood that can never be put together, but to me, you're treasuring and really looking at what we handle and how we use things. And I wanted to use those shavings, and it was very time consuming. And every day I'd do a little bit of the sewing, and then it wasn't tedious, but it was meditative. And the design has a lot of activity in it that I wanted to follow through with, kind of ending and rooting at the base. But it's, but to me, it's also about caring. And I think we need to care about everything more. And I think we have to think about what we view as animate and inanimate, and value all of our resources. But it's to be in the exhibit of circle of protection. I think it's a way of thinking and a way of living that I think should be global, and it's an abstracted idea that, well, everything we do has an impact. So I took all the shavings, and I now have this wall piece. I still have more shavings. I'm not sure what I'll do with them, but to me, they're more precious. So I think that's a good journey, and it will continue, because as I work, everything that I've done before carries on forward, and I'll see where this takes me. But it's threading cedar is a meditation on that. And also it's a poem that I wanted to mention. A lot of you are probably aware of it, but it's called The Way It Is, and it's by William Safford. And it's a beautiful poem that kind of uses the thread of our life going through, following a thread as a metaphor to life. So yeah, I'm pleased to share this with everyone.
Thank you, Annette. Cheryl Riley's unable to join us right now. She's doesn't have a strong enough internet connection, but we're looking at her fiber piece that features Arctic grasses, abalone shell, and burlap from the Mantle series, which examines the Earth's surface, and in particular, the circumpolar ecosystems and protective role these systems play in determining ecological balance and global climate health. And Cheryl is based in Esther, Alaska.
Here I am, Joe Going. I reside in Homer, and I'm very happy to be in this exhibit. The piece that I've contributed is a piece about healing, and it's healing everything. The prayer behind this piece is every single concern on any level, personally, nationally, internationally, cosmically, multiverse, universally. Receive a prayer of healing and devotion that will place one drop in the energy field of belief and hope, kindness, and unconditional love. And may that one drop grow to embrace all of the hearts that are wounded, broken, hurt, and striving for a greater whole understanding of all of us. One human family connected to all beings across the multiverse. We're not just the only beings. We're on one level. There are many levels of beings. And may we all come to realize unconditional love in ourselves and in the multiverse. And that's it.
My name is Sarah Wayland Lund. I am a Nubac artist living here in Anchorage with my husband and our 5 children. Well, one's in Canada now, but our 4 teenagers are still here with us. My mother was originally from Unalakleet and my father was originally from Maine. And I did not grow up very close to either sides of my family. So a lot of the work that I end up doing as a full-time artist, mom, and traditional tattooer here is based on that story of reconnection and trying to find my way back into the community, finding out where I come from, right? Also, a lot of my work, like you'll see here, has to do with the being female, because that's my perspective. It's all I know, being a mixed Indigenous female in the world today. And with this piece in particular, I started drawing this. I think I drew it maybe back in 2017. I just sketched it out when we were in a car driving somewhere. And then I refined it a little bit and I drew it out on this. This is, as you see, a 24 by 48 piece of plyboard. I haven't graduated to the Goodwoods yet, but I drew it out on this, and this probably took me over the span of tattooing and doing other artwork and being a mom, probably about a year and a half to finally buckle down and finish it at the beginning of last year. But I've also tattooed this piece. So it's this piece has lived with me in very different stages and now has its own living, breathing life on somebody else. But this in particular, to me, is always about remembering the women that came before us and how everything that they did influence us and who we are, and how we're doing that same thing in the cycles of our lives with our children, and just remembering their strength, the strength of all of our women. I use a lot of fish in my work, and I think it probably took me a little while to figure out exactly why I was drawn to using fish and women in the same. But it really came to me with one piece that I did a few years ago with the bodies of women inside the bodies of fish all lined up together. And the title of that one was "We're Not an Expendable Resource." And it's the idea of how Indigenous women are looked at and by the Western world in the same way as our natural resources are looked at as something to be used up and commodified. So I use that a lot. I tie our women to our natural resources as something that is meant to be precious and is meant to be protected. So that's a little bit about this piece here.
Of funk, thinking of like the Mothership or of Sun Rock, or thinking of jazz, you can see the sort of like space Chuck Taylors as a call out to hip hop, and the bright colors, the lame, all these little sort of nerdy space bits is something that's been heavily a part of Black culture, and it's and it's sort of part of that that growth and understanding of Blackness. And, Baby Dusty is he's sort of the it's in a way it's an avatar of Black youth. So it's there's sort of the quintessential parts of childhood. Of there's a little bit of cuteness. There's a little bit of I guess you could say he's sort of searching, right, in a way. So what you see represented here is just this childlike character standing on what could be like a world or a planet or something like that, and he's mechanized. He's a cyborg. He has to sort of have this this other mechanical piece to be able to connect and reach into the rest of the world. The sort of the large black open spaces you could see is like that can be seen as blackness. And in some ways, there's sort of like this inky darkness that you have to like reach into to help connect to other parts of yourself. So he's standing on the world, and but also is sort of being enveloped by darkness, by ink, by space in a way. This could be in a way it was also a call out to environmentalism, and how that is an important part of who we are as Black people and Black persons. And you see like the whales and the dolphins, the porpoises, and the image as well. And this is just also sort of a call out to protecting these things that is part of your lived experience, and something that maybe is not often seen as like a part of the Black experience, but is very relevant to us because water protection and your space and is important.
So my name's Amy Meisner. I am living on Dena'ina homeland in what is now called Anchorage. Been here for about 20 years. And I'm an artist with a craft-based practice. I use a lot of vintage linens, which offer up themes of protection in their own right. This is a theme that I've been thinking about a lot for a long time, just by the nature of the materials that I use. While we think of things like doilies and embroideries and linens and tablecloths and things as decorative, really their primary function is to protect and to prolong. A doily on a tablecloth is often, or on a table, is often the surface between, say, a lamp or a vase and the surface of the table, which would have protected the life of that piece of furniture. When our grandparents, for example, purchased a couch and kept it for 50 years, then you would have a big doily across the back to protect the upholstery. And these are things that we don't even live with anymore because nobody keeps their couch for 50 years. So the work that I consider has to do with labor as well. So that protective labor of those linens is one facet of that, but also the labor of women. So this handwork comes to me from a lot of different sources. Primarily, it's given to me. So it represents the literal labor of women. And it also represents the physical labor within the home. But lastly, the emotional labor of caregiving. And so that is the other theme that I work with a lot in my work and is reflected in this piece in particular. Birth weight, 8 pounds, 4 ounces. 8 pounds, 4 ounces is the literal weight of this collection of stones, which were collected on a beach in Prince William Sound, where every season my family and I take our little boat out and clean beaches of trash that washes up from all over the world. And these are remote beaches that are difficult to get to. And so often there's a lot of trash. We haul what we can that feels safe. And then after we've done that, then I take the time to look at the natural world and see if there isn't something that can be collected and considered and brought home, but I never take anything from a beach unless I've cleaned it first. That feels like, and I often never find just the right thing on a beach if I haven't cleaned it first. So there's this meditative time and spiritual time of considering the land and caretaking and caring for a shoreline. And then there is that reciprocity of being offered something else in return. So the thing with this piece is, all of these stones have been partially covered, swaddled, I guess you could say, in an old tablecloth that was embroidered by someone. I don't know who. This is often the case with women's labor from the domestic realm. It's done often for pleasure. And so the names of these women are rarely recorded. This work reflects the emotional weight of being a new mother, because it is really impossible to hold every single one of these stones at the same time. You cannot hold them in your arms without dropping some piece, some part of it. And I felt very much like that with each of my newborns, that they were difficult to hold initially. And there is the weight of caregiving and responsibility and protection and long-term keeping that is associated with motherhood. And that is something that I've wanted to explore by doing this piece as well.
Hi, everyone. I'm Bobby Itta. Yes, whenever I put anything on, I definitely feel like this presence of my ancestors. So it's almost like my ancestors, it's like a shield of protection when I put it on. And it's just like amazing. And everyone's always, oh my gosh, that's so beautiful. But I definitely feel protected. And then the other aspect of it is, people are a little concerned about seal skin, but we have, our hunting rights to hunt seal. And so it's also, I'm continuing that tradition of skin sewing, and that's also like a form of protection for me. Like it keeps my mind safe. It's like healing.
My work in conservation, land conservation and protecting of land, and my studio work started merging together. And I think this piece and this piece kind of shows to me what I've been doing for the last 25 years. This particular stump was from a tree that succumbed to the spruce bark beetle in the late 90s. And we bought our property about a year before all of this happened, right in front of my eyes. And this was a particularly large stump, and I saved it along with other ones for a long, long time. Well, close to 25 years. And I wanted to use this stump. I was just searching, is it about trees? Is it about what they've done for me? But really what I think, so I carved this stump to sort of enclose and protect. This is a female. There's a large hole that rotted out in the core, and she's definitely female. And I look at trees as protectors and female protectors. And she was cut down, and you can see a laceration on the inside. And so for these 20 plus years, I've been working in my yard and all around where we live in rewilding, protecting the land. The wetlands across the street from us are arbitrarily subdivided by colonizing effects. And what I've been doing for the last 25 years is trying to stitch this real estate back into a landscape and connecting the beach with our land and then back into the wetlands. So I guess through that, I consider myself a quilter in a very abstract way of stitching these parcels together. So, and the work is not as tangible. This is more of a tangible piece where I gathered materials for this nest of egg rings. So it's moss and lichen taken from the very land, from our yard, from old branches where moss grows on dead branches. And each of these rings, which were made quite a while ago, but have been shown outside a couple of times, but the presentation of them had never resolved for me. So I never let them go because they needed another context, and this was the context. So one of the rings has a magnifying lens in it, so the wearer will be looking at their own skin, and that's, I guess, and I made the rings for my size. So I'm at the self of it, bringing realization of this project and this whole decades-long effort is magnifying my own self. I'm part of it. And then another ring holds apple seeds, which is in a weird metaphorical way, kind of Johnny Appleseed or Garden of Eden and Eve eating the apple, but it's about garden and vegetation. And so there are 3 loose apple seeds inside with a magnifying glass. And the third ring is about the earth, and it's an earth marble. And in the Anthropocene, we're at this point where we're holding this thin skin of life in our own hands. It is what I do, and this is the outcome.
I'm a visual artist, performer, and a bookbinder. And throughout my work in making objects from paper and constructing book-like things, I feel that I've always been enclosing and protecting in the way that I approach my artwork. I use layers to hide and reveal different elements of the pieces that I make. So the piece we're looking at here, Wrap Around, it's just a flat piece of paper that's been pleated. And I'm really excited about the idea of pleating and folding and how it can transform a flat sheet into something dimensional. And I think the book arts really do address that, the 3-dimensional and the 2-dimensional, and where they blend and meld. And sometimes there isn't really a distinction between the flat and the sculptural because they can be both. So this piece starts out as a flat sheet of paper. It's pleated, and then the pleats are set by those geometric shapes. And when it's flat, it is not self-supporting, but as it completes a circle or a curve, it is self-supporting, and it also is able to support something else. I've been playing with these in the garden, and so they become plant supports, things that are falling over, they get too tall to be self-supporting. So this piece actually lifted up these flowers to support them in the garden. I think of them also as like a blanket that can be flat or folded, and then you can take it out and wrap it around yourself. And this one is in a completed circle. So then it, to me, becomes like a tree trunk, something that you can look down into, something that you can see both inside and outside at the same time. Oh, so there are a lot about interior, exterior, and how the 2 sides of the piece are meant to be seen. In a lot of ways, my work has been about peeling back the layers, the act of revealing and the ritual of revealing and hiding elements.
When I made this piece, I was thinking about people who maybe need extra protection because they're in violent situations or they're confronting systemic violence in different ways, and how especially our houseless relatives or our family members who maybe don't have housing security need extra protection. So I drew this piece. It's ink on wood, and I was trying to send out just a huge prayer to all of those people that they find a way to be safe, especially when we were being asked to isolate at home, and understanding how that was going to impact so many people in so many different ways. And we've seen that it has, people have been struggling. And so this piece kind of came from that. So I put references to COVID germs, and the idea was that all of these prayers that we'd be saying, I represent prayers in my work with these little bird shapes, like sending our prayers up to Creator. And I was thinking ancestors and also everyone kind of surrounding anyone who needed that extra help when there were like different threats coming in from outside. So, and then right before that happened, thinking about the Wampanoag people on the East Coast when they were fighting for official status under the US government. One of their tribal members, I can't remember the name of the tribal member that said this. He said, "We've been here forever, and we've been here longer than the United States. And when the United States is gone, we'll still be here," in response to the United States government denying their tribal sovereignty. And so I made this piece. After the show, I'm gonna donate it to their tribe, but I made this piece just thinking, each layer in Alaska, each time people advance to new places and were met with Western contact, like each layer of people was protective for the people that came after them. So I really, I feel like even in spite of all of the really heavy things that happened to everyone as a result of colonization, I send gratitude to all of the people that got exposed to colonial forces before we did, because Yupik is one of the largest, has one of the largest populations that still speak their indigenous language. And a big reason that is the case is because, like, in a sense, we all kind of protected each other. And that's kind of, I guess, how I choose to see it. Like trying to switch narratives, protection can be all kinds of different things, I guess.
My name is Kachung. And yeah, I'm excited to share this. I think this was just kind of an interesting way to be able to release an album during a global pandemic. Not only releasing it but also producing it and all that. So I worked on this album throughout a little bit before the pandemic, and then throughout the pandemic with my collaborator Alan Nielsen, and so I knew I wanted to get some music videos that to go along with the release, and it's been challenging. So one of the things that I was, I reached out to friends and folks that I really, really love and trust and respect, and I reached out to Donnie Reardon, an author and script writer, screenwriter, and filmmaker from my hometown in Mamtrecha. And I was like, here's the song. I want it to be kind of like a speakeasy type, kind of native bougie, and but during COVID. And so it's like, you got to have masks. And then so he was like, went back and he was like, came up with some ideas, and yeah, we just kind of, it was inspired by just being able to protect ourselves, but having to wear masks when we go inside. But what would that look like if we decolonize that? So I had the masks that are in there. It's, I think, one of the artists, Lily Hope, that mask that she has for the show is in this. It's in this music video, and then Ricky Tagaban is also in the music video as well. But the masks were primarily made by Abel Ryan, a Simshan artist, and then Drew Michael, and then myself. I made a couple of the masks as well, and but yeah, it was a really, really fun process. It was just like trying to be creative in a way that is respectful to our culture, but also like talking about like the what's to take care of ourselves during this global pandemic, and it was like challenging.
Gosh, I don't know where to start. On a personal note, I am a herring protector. I was in the past, I was a commercial herring fisherman. So what I was getting at is, not only am I a herring protector, I am a water protector as well. I take that to the next level and would like to think that I am a planet protector. I'm not quite a guardian of the galaxy yet, but I'm trying. The herring robes. I don't think I could cover it all in 5 minutes, but quite a few years ago, I was asked by, not asked, as part of the cultural programming in our schools, I do after school programming, and I also do a dual credit course through UAS in the Sitka School District. That's Northwest Coast Formline Art. It's place-based. We work around the seasons, and in the spring, generally we do a small unit in my class drawing herring. When I'm drawing an animal with my students, it's really nice to have an actual herring present. So when we made this design, we actually laid a herring on the table. I was working via Zoom or Microsoft Teams using a camera document. So I put a herring on the table from Sitka Sound, one that I had harvested for my subsistence halibut fishing. And from there, we went about drawing these herring. When I drew it, it just came naturally. In using them, in lofting them onto, nesting them into a confined space, means that they were drawn from an actual herring. They fell together perfectly, and just seemed to work out just right. I don't know what more to add with that, but from there I passed the design on to the herring protectors, and other artists got involved, and it seems to be all going in the right direction.
I'm Beth Blankenship, and I live in Anchorage. I grew up in Stillicum, Washington, which is on the shores of Puget Sound. And so I've always lived near a body of water. And I feel very connected to the life of the sea. This piece of bead embroidery is called Underwater Village. And while I was creating it, these little houses surrounded by water, I pondered words like storm surge and coastal erosion and permafrost thaw. These are terms that are frighteningly common in Alaska these days. The land of coastal communities is literally washing away from under people's homes. Nearly 30 communities in Alaska are threatened by escalating coastal disintegration. And Underwater Village is my imagining of a town after the residents have been compelled to leave. I want to quote Sylvia Earle. She says, she's fond of saying, you should treat the ocean as if your life depends on it, because it does. And the work I've been doing lately is focused on the ocean and climate change and the way humans impact the natural world. I use beads in some of my work and just thread in others, but I use stitch as a metaphor to focus on the idea that all things are connected. One thread is fragile, but many holding together are strong. And I am so glad to be part of this exhibit and talk about these things with my work and relate that to an audience. And I don't know what else to say about the work. This is another piece that's in the show. It's a little older. Oiled eider is about the more than 100,000 animals that died during the Exxon Valdez oil spill. And it is a beaded sculpture that I made as a memorial to all of those animals. It's been more than 30 years since the spill, and we are still struggling to recover from it. And the effects of climate change are making that even harder.
Ricky Tagaban was unable to be with us for the recording of the artist talk because of a hunting expedition. Ricky, who is based in Juneau, sent a headdress and robe made of plastic, duct tape, glitter, hot glue, plastic gems, zip ties, ermine, rabbit, Sharpie, fabric, bias tape, hair extensions. This was created in 2019 and has been shown once in a drag show in Juneau. Ricky writes, these garments are drag interpretations of Tlingit regalia. This style headdress is often used in spirit imitation ceremonies. The robe draws inspiration from Chilkat robes. I made these items for the first ever drag show hosted by my tribe, which was a medical fundraiser for a Tlingit language teacher, Mary Cruz. Peter Paul Williams, who's based in Sitka, sent 2 pieces made of halibut skin and a traditional paint he created with dog salmon egg saliva and wood fire charcoal pigment. Peter is a Yupik culture bearer, artist, designer, filmmaker, and educator, originally from Akiak. Really appreciate the beautiful work and the participation of artists from near and far across Alaska.
My piece is called Spirit Influences. I am not a professional painter. I never took a bunch of classes or anything, but I've painted my whole life. I started with oils and ran into some problems with allergies, so now I do primarily acrylics. This work focuses on the protection of the spirit, the medicine wheel on top. The medicine shield represents not just the spirit per se in the heavens, but also your personal spirit. And it's on the bottom reflects some of the things that historically have influenced either good or bad in our tribal area. And our tribal areas from Kasilof River down through Homer. It looks a little like an ancient painting. However, one of the things that I think is real important is to show how it's also modern. So I've included in the medicine shield, Argent developed a language, a written Denina symbolic language. So I've included that in there. I've included the Captain Cook coming up the inlet was an influence, good and bad. The Russian church in Ninilchik, primarily good and bad. And then the books each have names of the rivers, the local rivers. And one thing of note is that there are, other than the wood in the medicine shield, there is nothing natural portrayed there, because that's, for me, that shows that we have such limited resources. We're not able to go fishing like we used to. We're not able to go hunting like we used to. Everything is so limited now.
This is a piece, Keep Your Distance, that I began in 2019, pre-pandemic. And I was thinking about taking up space in the world as a female, as somebody that is trying to find a voice in this world of so much noise. And this is my older daughter wearing this coat. So this is a coat that fits an adult. And when you have it on, it has a presence of big power 80s shoulders pads, and the tusks pave a way in front of or through a crowd. And I felt like it was a cloak or almost a shield or a garment that you can put on and become and embody this new kind of powerful space in the world. And then as the pandemic came down the line, I live in Homer, and in some ways we were kind of buffered here from watching the infection rates spread. And I felt like we were kind of on a top of a mountain, and we could see these waves of fear coming toward us. And for me, this work took on a new dimension, and I began working on it's behind me, a child version of this coat. And I actually found a piece of mammoth tusk this spring. And I feel like this tusk, this strong protuberance of bone material out of our body, it's a physical, external way of protecting our families, our cultures, our children. And that's what these do for me right now. They're also made out of acrylic and foam, so they're very soft. And as a material, it's somewhat absurd and kind of unexpected when you touch it. They're very touchable. I'm kind of in the whole mix of making and thinking about all of this work. And I really love the idea of making do with what we have here.
My name is Lily Hope, Pushkin Dane Ad Yuchat. I'm Tlingit, Raven Duck Dane Tan. These Chilkat protective masks started in March of last year, just as the United States did their initial shutdown. First featured with First American Art Magazine with Masked Heroes in their spring 2020 magazine. These come from my lineage, I guess, in the training that I got from my mother in Chilkat weaving. And I could have just put a circle on them, but I love the animation here that there is like a way to breathe and speak through the work. We actually talk about our Chilkat blankets that way, that as we are weaving the eyes, we say, oh, now it can see us, and weave the nose. It smells us now. It can smell what we're cooking. And when the mouth is finished in the blanket, we say it can speak to us now. So I'm not sure what these are saying other than it is our responsibility to protect each other. However that can happen through vaccine, through wearing masks, through social distancing, through keeping your pod small, all those things. But these masks have sustained my family. Yeah. There's a nice little YouTube clip that we put together last year of how these help to record history now, as our Chilkat blankets have been recording history for hundreds of years. You're welcome to go find that. Thanks again for having me.
I'd like to invite Arjun Kvasnikov to speak about his diptych. This piece was just constructed and it was designed for some activities up in Inilchik. So it's a satellite piece. It's not going to be physically present in our show, but it's a reminder to stop by Inilchik and view this piece and to understand that art is living and working in our environment beyond the walls of the gallery. Thanks, Arjun. Thank you for being with us.
Because this disc here, this wheel, is one half, and in this larger picture in the top left, you can kind of see the second element, which is a tall alder tree made of copper tubing and some different wood and glass pieces, all painting. This was not originally intended to be in this show, but I was invited to include it because it's very related to a lot of other work that I have been doing and has really similar themes in spirit. The best description I can give to what you're looking at is a map of sorts. It's a meeting of both real life terrain and geographical data with oral history, and it's inspired by navigation and a second project, which was commissioned by Asian Benel a couple years ago, which is still coming together, called Tuyani Tune, a sculptural piece for Bishop's Beach. And this is a map of various places and geographical features. And what I wanted to show is the combination of our real life landscape with oral history and quote unquote traditional names, but those names have been encoded with, as Marla mentioned, I developed a written script that uses Denina-based phonetics. And so all of these place names, they're kind of hard to see because they're in this more yellow ochre color, are written in that script. And what I chose to do for the names was combine very early known indigenous names with more modern conventions. For example, my favorite name is Ses Denetti, which means shining ridge. And that's a name that I basically invented for Diamond Ridge. And I love to do that. I love to take our historical languages, because there's been more than one over the generations, and have them and kind of use them as a tool to match our modern day concepts of what different places are and what their reality is, because that doesn't always meet. When you look at lists of traditional place names, they have their own kind of context and sphere of being, and how we live today is very different. We think of places as divided up very differently.
In general, we've been kind of spending time back and forth between Anchorage and Bethel. Bethel and the YK Delta is an area that both Ryan and I have sort of family and sort of like personal, like historic history sort of connections to. In any case, in a really like vague, broad way, we've been working on a project that looks at ideas of home, like just thinking about and having conversations about home as it relates to a bunch of other sort of large, vague topics. And the pieces in this show are specifically related to like the notion of memory and like early memory, and the way in which our early memories can define like our sense of or like of home, like how we consider home, what makes us feel at home. And so as part of this larger project that's involved a lot of like working with youth and like presenting old archival photos, like traveling, collecting video and photography and printmaking, we've been also all the different people we interact with, we've been having conversations with them about their early memories. And so this series is a selection of from the memories that we've collected. It's like a selection of both people's early or sometimes first memories, as well as some thoughts on memory. And it's been really, really compelling. So within the sort of like Yupik tradition of the YK Delta, there's this notion of, and I'm going to mispronounce it, but the shlangok, like it's this idea of like first awareness, or the first time you're aware of like that you're in the world, like you kind of like see outside of yourself. It kind of it's rooted in this idea of sort of, I mean, the root of that word like connects to notions of like the wilderness, the weather, but it can mean anything really, like again outside, or this sort of awareness. So there's this we're kind of pulling on that when we're working in some of the smaller communities that we've been traveling to, and then more generally, again, I think we can kind of all agree that memory plays sort of like this important part in how we define ourselves, how we like write narratives about ourselves, either as individuals, as families, groups, even as like things like the institutions such as Benel. Yeah, so again, the piece in the show is us sharing a series of these memories from, again, the last few years of this project.
I'm a special education teacher by day, and right as the pandemic was putting everybody into lockdown, I was doing a story with my class. These kids with autism had created a comic book story. They created the villain in this last winter moot, but their story was called Interplanetary Human Spaghetti, and it was about a vampire who got stuck in outer space and had to figure out how to get back home. But that was the name of the story. So that one is included. And then I've been working on these indexes that go with the comic books, as education has become a big part of what we do at Duque Cesas. So the ones I sent were an index of all the terminology for glaciers and an index for all the terminology in space weather. And we're working on one for all the terminology in anthropogenic biomes and things like that.
I'm Koteliruk Kimberlyn Sheldon. I'm currently living in Noatak, which is in the Northwest Arctic borough. If you know where Kotzebue is, it's near Kotzebue. So I use oil painting as a way to balance the sides of myself as half Inupiaq. I process my experiences and emotions and kind of escape the physical world for a while. I kind of create these in-between worlds with my paintings. It uses real life imagery, some of my imagination, and just these scenarios that I kind of fantasize about. It helps me process things that I go through, things that I see, and just kind of center myself, I guess. These paintings came to life as I was transitioning between living in the city and moving home to the village. It's kind of this transition period for me. I had just finished my BFA at UAA, and I was kind of trying to find my place back in the village and find my most authentic self, and just recenter myself in my culture and kind of humble myself, and just bring myself back to my people and my land. Yeah. So land back, I'm sure we're all familiar with land back, the movement of giving the land back to the people that have rightful claim to it. This painting kind of came about through a little bit of frustration. I was seeing my subsistence seasons through fresh eyes, and seeing kind of like an outsider touch over our land, seeing like, guide planes flying really low over migrating caribou, and like people being frustrated. And it was just kind of a way for me to channel and process my own frustrations, and feeling a little bit stuck, like I don't have agency, or my elders don't have as much agency as they should over who touches their land and who kind of benefits from it. So that's what this painting is for me. It was just kind of like a way to process those emotions and the feeling of wanting to do something, but not really knowing what I can do other than like, call attention to the land back movement for my people.
This song is special. It's designed to talk about the relationship that Indigenous people have together all across the United States and Canada, and really all across the world, and the different challenges that are being faced, and how we can come together and overcome them together.
Oh hey ya, oh hey ya, oh hey ya, oh hey ya, ah ah, oh hey ya, oh hey ya, oh hey ya, oh hey ya. Angedachtukutaya. Ah, ah, ah. Ah, ah, ah. Ah, 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 ah.
I met you on that day. I felt my mind was going straight. I never knew that you existed until that very day. People told me all about you, that you helped them to get through. You been a guiding light now. Who the hell you doing it to? You never thought you loved me. I'm so scared to believe. You never thought you loved me, and I don't you ever leave. Oh, you never thought you loved me. So scared to believe. You never thought you loved me, and I don't you ever leave. You scared me on that day. You pulled at my face. I felt my life was going to change, but I knew this already. Now I know who I am and where I come from. I can't go back there to that place, but you can take it to my mind. Oh, you never thought you loved me. I'm so scared to believe. You never thought you loved me, and now don't you ever leave. Oh, you never thought you loved me. I'm so scared to believe. You never thought you loved me, and now don't you ever leave.
To another place. Today's temperate rains pours, we temperate rainforest, the emperor's rainforest remember this day for the eagle wolf is huffing and puffing. He's bluffing while stuffing the muffin down his gullet like nothing. Give the cog wonton to Donna from Puna. This Glue Chaz, Gujiana, men and Huna. This is for the Tongass, not Christopher Columbus, Northwest, Southeast compass.
You never thought you loved me, so scared to believe. You never thought you loved me.